So last month, I put myself up to the challenge of trying to find the best watch deals out there at different retail locations like Walmart, Target, Kohl's, Macy's. And of all those locations, I found this particular watch. This was one of the watches that I purchased, a Seiko SRPC93. I mentioned in that video that I'm gonna be giving this watch away, which I am. So if you do wanna have a chance to win this watch, fill out the watch giveaway form and then follow me on Instagram. But I said that after I did a full review of it, which I wanted to do. And in this video, we're going to be doing exactly that. So let's get into it. Last year in 2018, Seiko had some pretty big shoes to fill, with their Black Series and Blue Lagoon lines doing incredibly well. So to answer the call, last year they released the Save the Ocean line. And this Seiko SRPC is a member of that line. This is the USA made model and a watch that I recently purchased. So let's dive into first kind of the case and the construction, and then we'll kind of go through spec by spec what we're looking at here. Looking at this watch, we have a stainless steel case featuring a size of 44 millimeters with a thickness of 13.34 millimeters. For lug to lug height, we're looking at 48 millimeters, so pretty decent sizing on that regard for a watch with a case size of 44 millimeters. Lug width of 22 millimeters, has water resistance of 200 meters, and features a hardlex crystal. So despite this watch being quite large in diameter, it does wear pretty small in regards to the top-down appearance of the watch, given its tapered, highly angular lugs. And even I got mentioned in my Facebook group when I was wearing this thing in a previous video that, hey, Teddy, you can actually pull off some bigger watches, and I only have a 6¼ inch wrist. So I think that speaks to how this watch wears. It's definitely a little bit bulky on the wrist, but you can pull it off. The watch does a really good job of maintaining this while maintaining a level of presence, given it is a bit on the thicker side, and with that factory bracelet, we're looking at a watch about 183 grams or 6.46 ounces. The case back is a solid screw down case back featuring a stainless steel medallion and acknowledgement of its special edition. Also mentions 200 meters of water resistance and has that diver stamp. But now let's really jump into what makes this watch special, and that is on the front of the watch, and that is the dial. And this dial is stunning and was essentially the only reason I investigated this watch more, and really what caught my eye in the display cases when I was looking at watches from those different retailers. This thing just simply stood out. It has a beautiful blue ocean wave gradient dial that fades from a light blue at the top then to a deep blue black at the bottom of the dial. The hands are typical of what you might find on traditional samurai models with those large samurai sword hands, and I think work incredibly well with this particular design, giving the contrasting effects with the lume and the dial. The watch features a 120 click unidirectional bezel that features that same gradient type effect. Up until around the 15 marker on the bezel, you have that light blue, and then it turns into a darker blue following that, which I think really works well with the overall image of the watch. The bezel is incredibly smooth to work with, so much so when I am wearing this thing, I couldn't help contain my fidgeting self from turning it as long as I possibly could. Another interesting touch of this watch is the crown and the side of the bezel, which both come with this blackish gray finish, which I think works incredibly well again with matching the gradient style and theme of the dial and bezel of the watch. One annoying aspect that I will say about this watch is the chapter ring, and it's probably something you can expect at this point, but is kind of disappointing considering this is a professional specification, or supposed to be, watch from Seiko, and there's a slight misalignment with the chapter ring. It's oh so subtle and doesn't drive me insane, but you do kind of expect a little bit more from Seiko. I didn't even notice it in the store until I started taking a little bit closer examination. But moving from a negative to a positive, let's jump to the lume. And the lume is absolutely fantastic. Honestly expected at this point when you're thinking of Seiko watches. It is applied to the hands, the indices, and the dot on top of the bezel to help with identification in dark settings. The watch features Lume Bright luminescence, and just to provide a level of comparison, here's a picture of it next to my old Orient Mako 2 that I gave away last month. On the watch dial, you will find that diver stamp, and this watch does meet ISO 6425 standards for a dive watch. If you guys do want to learn a little bit more about water resistance, ISO standards, and what does that all mean, I've done a video all about that in the past, which I can link in the description down below. In addition, you will find a date window at the 3 o'clock position, which looks fine, but I think I would have preferred to see kind of like a steel outline of the window, as I think the dial seems to appear to fall off, and would have preferred to see a separation between when the date window starts and when the dial ends. For the bracelet, we're really not looking at anything special, and for any of you that have owned Seiko bracelets before, you know that a lot of them are very underwhelming. The bracelet is brushed stainless steel and features a double secure clasp with a few micro adjustment spots on the buckle, which is nice, but I am imagining many of you that if you were gonna get this watch would probably wanna switch it out for maybe a third party or a different bracelet. Now for our movement here, we have the automatic Seiko 4R35. Basically the brother of the 4R36, featuring a day-date complication, as this one just has the date. The movement is hackable and has hand winding capabilities. And for those that don't know what hackable means, that just means when you pull out the crown, the second hand will stop so you can have more precise ability to set the time. From an accuracy standpoint, these movements are claimed to run plus 45 seconds to minus 35 seconds per day, which, like many Seikos, is a very modest estimate, as I found this watch runs much better than that, a fraction of that, and as well as all the other Seikos with this movement I've ever had. So before I interject my verdict here, I think a fun thing that I could do with this review and then upcoming reviews, which I want to do a whole lot more in 2019, is get the girlfriend perspective. So Courtney, whenever I always like to show her watches that I'm either reviewing, I'm looking at, or as I'm kind of going through my Instagram feed, like, hey Courtney, what do you think of this? So I asked her what she thought of this watch, and she actually commented on a picture of this watch and just simply said, I won't be borrowing this one. And she does try to borrow some of my watches. So you have the female perspective. If you guys buy this watch, just know that your girlfriend might not like it, or your wife, so hide it. But on this channel, we don't really care about other people's opinions. We care about our own. And my personal opinion of this watch is, I think it is a very unique looking watch. And when you're looking at the Seiko lineup of divers, it is immense. From the Seiko SKXs, the Turtles, Samurais, Sumos, Tunas, Marine Masters, and so many others, it is hard to stand out. From a spec standpoint, this watch is exactly what you would expect from a Seiko watch in this range. A well-constructed watch, good for the money. It's not perfect, but it is very, very solid. That said, the reason I was drawn to this watch was because of the dial and how this thing looked. It is truly unique, and in my opinion is probably the most interesting and eye-catching dial I have seen on a Seiko diver without being overly obnoxious and potentially leading to a detached retina. I mean, seriously, some of these things are so bright I might have to go see an ophthalmologist. But if you are either somebody that is looking for your first quality dive watch and want something with a little more flair, or are an obsessed Seiko diver fan that already has enough divers to equip your own personal naval fleet, this is the watch for you. And I see this bringing a level of uniqueness to your lot of watches, no matter how small or big your collection is. So guys, that is my review of the Seiko SRPC93. Probably not a watch for me. It's a little bit too big for my liking, but I will say it is a very unique diver, and I will commend it for that. And if you guys do want to win this watch, definitely fill out the link down below, and also follow me on Instagram. But if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's a huge way to help the channel. Would really appreciate it. And finally, don't be a watch enthusiast that does not consider watch straps. It's an important part of collecting watches and really allows you to get the most out of your watches and give them kind of that new watch feel without spending the money. On my website, I have some of the best watch straps in the industry, and any purchase also really supports myself and the content that you're watching. And as somebody who recently just went full-time at this, that'd be a big help for me. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Be well, as always, and I will see you all very soon.